The state elections board is trying to make elections less transparent. That's the conclusion Dr. Andy Jackson reaches in his latest John Locke Foundation research brief. Andy is director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity at the Locke Foundation, and the less transparency comes in the area of election observers. Tell us what the State Board of Elections is looking at.
Well, election observers are people that are appointed by parties to basically sit down, observe what's going on in the elections, perhaps write reports if they see something that they think isn't, quite right, and that's the basis of complaints that the parties would later make to the county and the state boards. It is a fairly common practice. Almost all counties appoint observers. Some of them appoint a few. Some of them, and I've communicated with a few boards, appoint by habit 3, 4, 5, 6 to view a particular precinct or an early voting site per day, especially if they have the volunteers available. The state board wants to go ahead and limit the total number that those parties can appoint to any given precinct to 2. There are some exceptions. If there's at-large observers, they can go. But the basic thing is voting place-specific observers. The State Board of Elections wants to limit that to 2 a day.
Now, in current practice, you can have 2 at a time or 3 if there's this at-large observer.
Mm-hmm.
What difference does it make if there are only 2 per day? Does it have to do with replacement of people during the course of the day?
Right. So right now under current law, you can only have 2, and I'm just going to talk about the voting location specific folks for the rest of this, I think, unless you want to bring it up otherwise. You're limited to 2 at a time. And the law states that they can be relieved after no more or no less, I should say, than 4 hours in the position. So the implication there is that you have 2; those can be replaced after 2 hours. Those replacements can be, 4 hours, and those 2 replacements can be replaced after 4 hours, so on throughout the day. What the state wants to do is say, no, you can't have more than 2 throughout the entire day. Now, this is going to make it, as a practical matter, more difficult for observers. These folks are not paid to do this. It's a difficult job. Usually, if things are going well, it's an incredibly boring job, and we hope in all these elections, these observers have a very boring day. And so it's difficult logistically for the parties to have observers in there that are willing to sit through the entire 13-hour period and observe the counting afterwards. And so as a practical matter, this is going to make elections less transparent because you're not going to be able to fully staff those observers.
In your research brief, you point out the problems that this would create for observers. You also point out that this idea of limiting the observers to 2 in one spot during the course of the day runs counter to what state law says.
Right. And if you don't mind, I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. The state law says that the chair of each political party in the county has the right to designate 2 observers to attend each voting place at each primary and election, and such observers may, at the option of the designated party chair, be relieved during the day of the primary election after serving no less than 2 hours. The clear indication there is you're going to have 2 people at the start of the day, and then after they have served no less than 4 hours, they may be relieved. And so the clear intent of the law is for there to be more, or at least to be allowed to have more than 2 per day, just no more than 2 at a time, and that those 2 should serve a minimum of 4 hours before they are replaced by others. The state board's trying to change that to a total of 2 per day is in clear contradiction to that.
And this certainly sounds as if it's a way that would lead to less transparency because you have fewer people with a stake in the game watching to make sure things are done correctly.
Yeah, certainly. The net effect of this is that you're going to have fewer observers, and there's going to be more periods in the day when precincts and early voting locations, and you have to remember, those work over the course of a couple of weeks. So the parties already have to struggle to make sure that they have people monitoring those the full time. You're going to have more gaps. You're going to have more periods where there are not going to be observers from the parties watching this, and that is a real problem for transparency.
It sounds as if the system that we have in place now fits in with that old maxim that you heard from Ronald Reagan: trust but verify. We trust that our election system works, but we have these observers who are going to be watching to make sure that happens.
Right, and that's part of a larger issue that we have. It's important that people, this is kind of a Madisonian balance, that people that do have skin in the game, as it were, have the right to make sure that their side is being fairly represented, that there's nothing that is diminishing their ability to freely participate in the election process, that there's no advantage given to any side. Now, we do trust the people that work there, but it's built into our system because nobody's going to watch out for somebody's rights better than themselves. And so there is a place for the parties, both major political parties and minor parties, if they have the means to do it, to actually get in there, observe, and make sure that their rights and the rights of their voters are being respected.
Your research brief points out that it's already state law that says that it's not just 2 observers during the course of the day, but no more than 2 at a time. But apparently some legislators are looking at this and saying, maybe we need to clarify this.
Right. And it's strange because the law is already pretty clear. I'm really amazed that the state board is trying to interpret this in a way so that no more than 2 at a time suddenly becomes no more than 2 a day. This is not really clarifying like they're claiming they're doing. This is really muddying the waters from the clear intent of the law. So yeah, I am aware that some legislators are moving along. Hopefully it won't come to that. There is a hearing on Thursday, May 6th with the state board. Up through early June, there's a public comment period. If you go to the State Board of Elections website, you can go through and find that. Let the state board know that this is something that is wrong. Hopefully people will come out. If you feel the other way, speak out that way as well. But hopefully this will get nipped in the bud, at least if not at the state board level, then at the Rules Review Commission level, which is the next step in the process, where there's a commission that looks at it and sees if these rules actually fit the law. And I think the Rules Review Commission will probably stop this. But if it comes to it, maybe the General Assembly is going to have to clarify something that already looks pretty clear, which is unfortunate.
And their bill could say, this time we mean it. The headline for this John Locke Foundation research brief, once again: State Elections Board is trying to make elections less transparent. Its author is Dr. Andy Jackson. He is director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity at the John Locke Foundation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.